Hello, everyone, and welcome to lesson 5, where we're going to actually talk about struggling readers. And I'm going to just talk about differentiation now because I think you need to have just a little bit more about differentiation when you're creating your lesson plan. So I'm just going to push the differentiation into lesson 5, and then I can just focus on inclusion for lesson 6. Okay, so there you go. So just a little, oops, don't know why I didn't like that. Whoa, what is happening? There we go. Okay, so just a couple housekeeping things. First of all, these will be your partners for assignment 3 lesson plan teaching. So you will be teaching just one other person, and this will be the person that you are linked with for the lesson plan teaching on Monday. Alexa, no pressure. You're with me. So no pressure. There you go. Okay, so just have a look there, and you be ready to wow your partner with your amazing lesson on Monday. Okay, so let's start here with vulnerable and struggling readers. So basically, how can we support those readers who need a lot of individualized attention when we have a class of 26 kids, and we are it's busy? So how do we help that particular student? So you've done a whole bunch of great planning, you have an amazing schedule, you've brought in all sorts of different instructional strategies, you're working at different blooms, you're trying to use different activities, but you still have a struggling reader in your class. Okay, it's just the reality. Probably at some point in your career, or probably almost every year, you will have a student in your class who struggles with reading. Okay, so I put this on here. Trust me, if I held the holy grail of how to teach struggling readers to become proficient readers, I would happily give it to you. I would happily give you the ultimate way of teaching kids how to read, and especially struggling readers how to read. But like everything in teaching, there is no one cup, there's no one strategy, there's no one boxed resource that will do for every situation. So again, I went to Google because Google is kind of part of our life now. And I put in helping struggling readers in elementary school, and look at how many hits I got. 159 million hits. So I thought, well, I should at least be able to go to the library, and it should be a little bit less. It is a little bit less, but even through a vetted resource, there are still 1,878 results. And those are probably books, which have thousands of pages. And so there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of opinions on how to help vulnerable and struggling readers. But I think that there are some basics beyond sort of such programs that you need to think about when you're dealing with struggling readers. So the first thing is, you kind of have to have a sense of why some students may struggle. And I think this is a really nice, succinct grouping of why kids struggle. So this is from one of my favorite sites. If you don't have it in your ePortfolio, if you don't have Reading Rockets in your ePortfolio, get it in there, because you will find almost everything that you want about teaching kids how to read at any level in Reading Rockets. So here we go. Why some kids struggle. Some kids have a learning disability that makes reading difficult to learn. Others come to school without the literacy experiences they need to become readers. Some children struggle because they've received poor or inadequate reading instruction. When these and other risk factors are identified early, though, many children's reading difficulties can be prevented. That's why you will hear so much about early literacy and the importance of early literacy, so that when those kids come to us in kindergarten, they have had some experience with literacy. So 6 reasons why kids might struggle with reading: difficulty recognizing the individual sounds in spoken words, those phonemes. The ability to recognize and play with speech sounds is called phonemic awareness, but you know that. Number 2, difficulty sounding out written words or decoding and recognizing familiar word parts. Okay. Difficulty understanding what is being read. They just have limited vocabulary, and background knowledge contribute to lower levels of reading comprehension. So say you are, you're reading a book to kids and you're talking about all these animals, skunks and squirrels and dogs and cats, and maybe you might, like, if you had a child that had never seen or had any kind of interaction with an animal, it's a foreign concept. And so that's when kids come to us with really limited background. They have no reference. They have no places in their brain to hook all these ideas or these concepts that you're talking about. Okay. Number 4, they might have limited English language skills. So those are going to be your ESL learners. Number 5, limited experience with print and books. If you have a child from a low income situation, they may not have had any books in their house as a child. And think about that when suddenly this is so foreign. They've never maybe heard a story, read a story, flipped the pages of a book, so they don't even know which way to hold it. So they just have really limited experiences. And number 6, instruction that doesn't meet an individual child's needs. For example, a child with dyslexia may need additional explicit or step-by-step instruction provided in a careful, planned sequence. So maybe just the way that they were taught just didn't resonate, and they just could not function in there. Okay, so let's look at some generalities around struggling readers, because again, there is no holy grail. These are some general aspects that you're probably going to find with most struggling readers. Okay, so these are some general ways that you can help struggling readers in a full class situation. Okay, so in a full class situation, do as much in your class as possible. As soon as that child gets taken out of class, they're missing all of your class time, which is super important for them to feel like they belong and that they actually get all the jokes because they didn't miss something funny that happened that, then everybody keeps referring to. So keep them in class and try to do as much one-on-one or small group as possible. So this is that guided reading time when you are pulling a few kids. If you can do it one-on-one, even for 5 minutes, that is way better than just not doing anything at all, or in a small group. Okay, think about shifting your mindset. So think about, instead of asking, what's wrong with Jeremy? What's wrong with Jeremy? Ask, what does Jeremy need to learn in order to continue his development as a reader, and what can I do to support that development? It's a very different mindset. Jeremy will know that you have a different mindset. Instead of just what is wrong with Jeremy, is how can I support Jeremy? What does Jeremy need right now, and how can I support this young reader? Okay. You also want to try to personalize instruction in multiple modes and media and focus that instruction. So think about, are there lots of ways that you can introduce text to a struggling reader? Can you go on a field trip? Can you bring in a guest speaker? Can they work one-on-one with a different adult in the school to learn different vocabulary or different concepts? Can they read picture books? Can they listen to YouTube clips? Can they just talk through some things? Can they listen to recordings? There's so many recordings of amazing books out there now that maybe they could do that instead of always just having to read, because it would help them gain that background knowledge, gain that vocabulary, hear that fluency in there. This other thing is focus the instruction time. Oftentimes with our struggling readers, we need to pare it down. We need to say, okay, they need to work on the ch sound. They're not getting that. And really, really super laser focused. You're seeing this in your videos and your reading on lessons. Again, when you're working with struggling readers, absolutely focus. Another one, probably one of the biggest ones, is just increase literacy time. So just these kids need just more time. They need longer length of time with literacy concepts, and they need it more often during the day. So if you can do some one-on-one work with these kids, like even 5-10 minutes, but 2 or 3 times a day, that is the frequency will help them just keep those concepts at the forefront. Again, make it really explicit. Really explicit. This is what I want to do today, and we're going to focus just on this one ch sound, or we're just going to work on decoding these 6 words. That kind of a thing. And more dosages. This comes from Joyful Literacy, where they just talk about they just need to hear the concepts more often. Most kids that you teach will be able to understand a concept maybe after hearing it 3 or 4 times. Our struggling readers sometimes need to hear it 7, 10, 15, 20 times. And that's the more dosages. They just need more. Avoid isolated concepts. This is my favorite, where, the kid does a worksheet on the ch sound and then they never see ch again in any books or in your teaching. They'd have nothing then to relate it to. So don't do isolated concepts. Make sure that it's very sequential. And match materials and learners with the text, right? So Penny Kittle, who I introduced to you last class, and you saw those high school kids, when they had a book in their hand that they loved, they absolutely dove in and read. Right? And so that's the same thing with elementary readers. So match the material and the level sometimes. But if this kid wants to read Harry Potter and it's above this child's reading level, let them read Harry Potter because they're motivated and interested, right? If you either make them read a leveled book that they're not interested in, or you give them something that's way too hard, they're going to become frustrated, and then they're just going to rebel, and they're just going to either be crazy in your class, it's going to become a classroom management issue, or they're just going to shut down, which is absolutely not what we want. Okay, so as I was creating this slide, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something. So I called for advice from my sister. This is my sister, Glenda, and she retired after, teaching 30 some years. So I called her up and she called me, or actually I texted her and she called me. She's like, Colleen, I can't answer this question in a text. So this is basically my phone conversation with my sister about how did she help struggling readers in her class. So basically, I'm just going to kind of read through this. She said, lots of reading to students with expression by you is key, absolutely key. When they hear the teachers read with expression and excitement, they buy in. These struggling readers will buy in because they're excited. Guided reading books, so like the Fontes and Pinnell, so those leveled readers, she said are fine, but they didn't really, help as much as finding a really great novel or book and engaging the students in it. So again, it's that engagement piece. And she said students would come back to her years later and say how much they liked a book, how much they remembered it, even as a struggling reader. So she said, the combination of guided reading program and great literature that the kids will connect with work the best. So don't throw out your Fontes and Pinnell, but combine it. Know that it's not the Holy Grail by itself. Worksheets, this was a funny conversation. She said more for busy work to keep them occupied than for real learning. She said there is a time for this. Sometimes just classroom management, your kids are like zooey and it's like, okay, I just need you to sit at your desk and do a worksheet. And maybe when you need a break, this is the reality. And it can be used for assessment. So if you want to talk about vocab or story understanding, those kind of things. This was, I thought, really super interesting. Here, number 4, struggling readers want to be part of what everyone else is doing. So try to involve them in some way. So have some excelling readers read to struggling readers. Now, this is not really differentiation. It's just a way to include the struggling readers. Struggling readers can usually understand, but just can't read it. So then the low reader can record their answers to comprehension questions on an iPad to show that they're understanding the story. And then she said, then you play a couple of your low readers' responses for the class, because usually they can comprehend, they just can't read it, right? And so then she said these kids just beam when they are included in a real way in class. So I thought that was pretty cool. She said, you got ones in your class who are super tech savvy. So she said, use technology to your advantage now. Like, do recordings, if you have an ESL student who's struggling, do translations. Use your technology to your advantage. And she said this without seeing my slide, my 59 million hits. She said there's so many resources out there. She said it's kind of mind blowing. There's no one resource that will work for every student and every teacher. And great literature that she came back to this, great literature that students are interested in is a huge step in the right direction to getting these kids to read. Okay, so that's a huge step in the right direction. So I want to showcase a series of books that I think is a really cool series. It's called ORCA Books. It's it's from the West Coast in Vancouver, in British Columbia. And what they do, let's see if I can get there. What they do is they write books, and they write books that are then, they look like, actually I'm just gonna put this down here so you can see here, ORCA Books. There we go. So I'm gonna go to ORCA Sports. So you'll see here that they have the Fry reading level is basically the first number is the grade, and the second number is the month of the year that they're in. So this would be, above all else, would be about a grade 3 and about 4 months in. So about Christmas time. This is where they should be reading. So they've rated them, but I want you to look at the books. Sports. Here we go. So, but look at these books. These are, you've got to be able to find something in the ORCA books that will inspire some students. So Kickstart here is like a 3.8. So the end of grade 3, Boiler Line is like a 2.8. So the end of grade 2 reader, and Centerville here is a 4.5. So you think about a beginning reader at the end of grade 3 who's maybe still reading at a end of grade 2 level, and you give them a book that looks like this. It looks cool, right? And there's so much about reading. Like, they don't want to read baby books when they're at the end of grade 2. They don't want to read kindergarten books. But if you give an end of grade, or a grade 3 kid who was still reading at a grade 2 level this book, they'd probably buy in. Right? So again, matching those books, finding those perfect books to go with the child's interest. Okay, so that is that. I just really like this series. Again, this should go on your ePortfolio. Okay, and finally, if intervention is needed, intervene early. Like, if you're like, I've done all these things in my class, I've found good books, I've been expressive, I've been excited, I've done one-on-one. If you're like, this child really needs some more help, intervene early. Don't let it go on for the whole year. Like, intervene early, get those supports in place. Involve all your supports, your teachers, your administrators, your parents, your speech pathologist, your counselor, whoever you need. Pull all your people in around you. Evaluate the interventions. Just because the speech pathologist comes and works with your student, you are still the best person to know exactly what that student needs. So talk to whoever's coming in and evaluate what they're doing. And I know it's kind of tricky when you're a new teacher, because you're like, I don't want to evaluate the speech pathologist. But again, you need to advocate for that child because you know what that child needs. Utilize all your professionals. Again, just rally the troops and support that child, and provide ultimately the best thing is to provide a rich literacy classroom experience. Be excited about literacy, know what you want, do as much one-on-one as you can, and that's going to be that child's best way to learn how to read. Awesome. Take care.